Right. Welcome everyone to this first episode of the Single Source, a pimvendors.com podcast on product data, PIM, MDM, DAM, basically a regular get together of industry experts to discuss the challenges, the developments of the product data space. Today, I'm joined by two industry experts. First of all, we have Helen, the Director of Product Marketing at Syndigo. She has loads of experience in seeing what works and also what doesn't work when you're trying to manage product data at scale. Maybe, Helen, could you quickly introduce yourself for the audience?
Hi, yes, of course. Thanks, Stefan. My name's Helen Grimster. I'm currently working at Syndigo in product marketing, focused on MDM and PXM. I've spent a lot of my career working in the wonderful world of product data, MDM and PIM, talking to people about how they can manage their product information at scale across channels, markets, and so on. Before I was at Syndigo, I was at Gartner. So got a pretty unique view of this problem from both sides, and I'm really excited to be joining and talking about this lovely topic today. So thanks very much.
Cool. And I'm also joined by Chris. Chris is my co-founder at pimvendors.com and has spent years helping companies, small and large, to find the right product information management system, and also help them develop the right processes and structures. Chris, could you do a quick intro as
Yeah,
well?
well, nice to be here. And I've got an experience of more than 25 years, almost 30 years in product data. And before that, in business intelligence, data warehousing. So, working with data, that's all my professional career in business and IT. I did several roles. I was head of content for a big European company. I had different roles in as an MDM PIM architect, but also as an enterprise architect because, well, PIM, DAM, MDM, it's not on its own. It's always related to other solutions, but also other processes within the organization. So that's basically my background. Um, Going back quite a long time already.
We're not gonna guess your age here, Chris. Um,
Yeah.
so
So,
not today. And I'm Stefan Spakers. I'm the other co-founder of pimvendors.com. I have multiple years, decades of experience even in running e-commerce businesses and being responsible for the internal processes. And product data is a huge part of that. Before I met Chris and we co-founded pimvendors.com. And yeah, now we're here discussing data. I think what people fail to recognize or at least underappreciate is that it all starts with data. It is the foundation on which you are building the rest of the organization and the whole structure and the processes. And then on top of that, only the tool. And if you do not fix that product data, if it's low quality, it is going to cost you somewhere down the line. And that can be in increased return rates. It can be in lost sales because customers leave your website with open questions and basically do not complete the purchase, or just because it leads to all kinds of rework on the operational side. So internally having to retranslate or re-edit all kinds of parts of your product data because it's bad quality. I think the challenge we all see is that it's very difficult to really get that accountability in. Data quality hardly, well, I would say product data hardly has a dedicated owner within organizations. It is still, even after all those years, some sort of a new kid on the block, or it falls a bit between the different responsibilities. It's not sales, it's not ecom, but we all use product data. And that also means that product data quality is not well embedded in most organizations. And unfortunately, just adding another AI tool will not fix that problem for you. So what we're going to discuss today here with Helen and Chris is, well, why that is the case, what we see in practice, especially also on what we see work to mitigate that problem and practically get to the solution, hopefully, at least. Um, is any of you guys willing to share their experience with working with poor product data quality?
Well, I think you've summed it up really well. That it's really not seen as the most exciting or interesting topic, and it's either nobody wants to own it or take responsibility for making sure that they have that great foundational layer of data for so many different use cases across the organization. Of course, we're very much focused on PIM, but of course that data can be used for so much more. It's not exactly the thing that gets people excited. Data quality is kind of just assumed that if you buy a tool, it will do it all for you. If only that was the case. So I think you've got to really go back to be thinking about, as you said, the ownership, and it's the people and the process before the tools, as we would always say about everything. But I think with data quality, it is possibly the most important thing to start off with when you're doing any program in this space. I mean, that's just my feeling, that it's underestimated and sometimes not loved as much as it should be. I don't know what you think, Chris.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things is that this data is used throughout the whole company. That results in the fact that nobody is actually the owner in most cases. Because when everybody is the owner, no one is the owner, and that's I think one of the key points. Someone needs to be the owner of the data, and of course you can differentiate between different kind of departments and different kind of uses, but someone has to coordinate this, and it needs to come together, and someone needs to be take the ownership, and that's often. Said, okay, we have a tool, so IT is the owner, but IT never can be the owner. It's the business who owns their product data, and that's something which is often misunderstood or has grown in a certain way in a company. And this is something all the conversations we have with companies. This is one of the topics.
And it's always, I mean, I don't know if you've heard it, but people blame other people or they blame the system. They blame, they don't think about the fact that they were the people that set it up in the first place. There's no governance, there's no standards. And I think you've got to go right back and think about what is the data that you need and what is the acceptable level. And of course, you don't need to worry about every single piece of data about your product. It's the, making sure that you have that key set, but thinking about, as you say, who's going to own it and getting people to actually get behind a program to improve that bad data quality. That sometimes can be the hardest part. It's changing culture. It's sometimes it's quite embarrassing to sort of actually own up to the fact that your data isn't as good as perhaps you think it is. So that's always, for me, has always been the hardest conversation, is for people to actually say, yeah, we appreciate the fact that our quality isn't as good as we'd like it to be, and then thinking about how they're going to move that forward. And it still persists even now. I think sometimes you're stunned when you speak to some large organizations that they're still doing everything on spreadsheets and they're still relying on macros to make sure that they're getting it right. So I think it's that is sometimes the hardest part, is the change that's required to really drive it forward.
It's the ownership, it's a change,
Mm.
but also the definition of what
Yes.
is data quality. I mean, it's also a container term, data quality. Well, what is it? Accuracy, consistency, completeness, uniqueness. All these kind of things are part of data quality. So you really need to define what is quality, what is good enough quality. I mean, that's what you also
Mm.
already mentioned, Alan. Uh, it can be 100%, but it doesn't have to be 100% for all things. It has to
No.
be good enough. And when you are going for the 100%, somewhere it's not going to happen because
Never,
uh,
never going to
never,
happen.
never, never.
You've got to be realistic about delivering that. And I think it's really focusing on those key pieces of information that are used across the enterprise, because maybe you have a certain set of attributes that you need for your ERP, for example, but they may be completely different from what you may need for your website. So it's coming to that common consensus within the whole organization across the business, what good looks like, and how you actually come up with those as you said, the actual definitions of what you mean by good quality data. And of course, there's a lot of, and you can't not think about AI along the way, but that's great. But you've still, for later on, because you've still got to think about what is acceptable for you to actually feel that you are delivering value to the business. And I think
Yeah.
that's the shift from it being an IT problem, which I would say, maybe 10 years ago, it was always about IT owns the data. Whereas now we're moving to the business being responsible for ensuring that they're delivering the right data to the right people at the right time. So it's a massive shift there, and getting those definitions correct is the foundation really for delivering the best part. And that is, as I say, often overlooked, and maybe the definitions are sort of scrambled together or not really thought through, and or everything's done all at once, rather than trying to roll it out bit by bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then it comes also down to architecture, and I don't mean IT architecture, but business architecture. There are several departments, there are several output channels which need data, and they don't need all the same data. They need different data. So 100% good for one channel doesn't need to say it's 100% for another channel. When you want to order things, your ERP needs to be in place. So this data needs to be 100% for that goal. But it doesn't say it's the same goal as when you want to publish things on your website. You need different data, more data, but it needs to be consistent.
And I
So it
think,
is.
sorry, go ahead, Stefan.
Yeah, no, no. So it starts with data quality, right? It starts with the data, then the processes, then the tools. I think it's very interesting to look at that definition of quality, and that this definition shifts depending on from where in the organization you're looking at that data, or actually from where at the receiving end you're looking at that data. And your Amazon channel might need different things than your own web shop. Customers might need different things than your WMS, your warehouse management system. So that really defines the level of product data quality that you want to have as a channel, and that you should achieve as the business. And I think that is also interesting that you mentioned the history here, Helen, where it's 10 years ago, this was an IT party
Yeah.
where them from IT are doing something with systems, and we need to have some records in place, and fine. Where now it's much more spread around the whole business, and everyone should be involved. I don't want to say is involved, because I think
Mm.
that's a challenge we see in practice. But no, I think that is an interesting development, where that business gets more and more integrated into the product data.
When business gets integrated more and more, you will also get different roles within the business. Like a channel manager, for instance. That's something which wasn't there 10 years ago. I
Mm.
mean, we just, okay, we have a website, we need to provide some information for the website, but now you have multiple channels and it needs to be coordinated and needs to be organized. So then you need a channel manager to really organize this, and he has to work together also with the data team and what's needed at what moment, for instance.
And I think, even though we sort of said it stuck with IT 10 years ago, of course, the way that people are using product data has changed so much. I mean, even in the last few years, I mean, with the rise of people moving, of course, first of all, to a website, then, of course, we talk about all the different channels, different marketplaces. And then, of course, now we're moving into being able to publish or make sure that you've got the right product data in the newfangled things like TikTok and, those channels that were never there before. And obviously now, as we're moving into making sure that you can surface your product data in the new channels, the new ways of shopping, maybe with ChatGPT or Google and so on. So it's changing rapidly, but also that need to be agile and quick at sharing that updated product data. It's no longer okay to have it running and spend weeks getting that ready. You have to be able to ensure that quality is consistent and right much sooner, much faster. So that means that it's becoming even more of an issue and even more important to invest in getting those processes right, because you do not want the wrong images out there. You don't want the wrong pricing. You want to make sure that you are landing top in the search and so on. And I think as we are moving to different ways of people purchasing products, that's going to become even more important. So I think the going backwards, it wasn't as dynamic and real time as it is now. And that, of course, puts more pressure on ensuring that you have that right foundational layer of quality in the beginning. So I think it's definitely evolving, and it's evolving fast. So, and the need for, as we've said, different people to be involved in that process to ensure that they're getting the right information at the right time. So I think it's even now, even in the last few months, we're seeing a change in that need for the best quality product data that you can have. And as we said, it doesn't have to be 100%. It needs to be good enough to deliver to the channels that are receiving it. I don't know if you're seeing that, Chris, if you're seeing a shift in the need for the use
Sure,
cases for product
sure.
data.
Yeah, and there's a big shift, and what I see also is that the foundation on which it is the most companies are built are not very agile. It's really point to point, or when they have a PIM, sometimes it's just behind the ERP because we need data for our website. But then distributing this data to other channels is a problem because the foundation is not correct at that point. The architecture is not built for agility, and it's easy to say we need to be agile, but to shift this way of working, it's a huge impact on a company, and it takes a lot of courage
Mm.
from management to make decisions this way, and that's you really need to provide them with a good case, a good ROE calculation. Okay, what's happening when you don't do anything? Okay,
Yes.
I keep spending money, but it doesn't bring me more business. Okay, that's not what I want. So then all these kind of scenarios, we often need to provide companies with the right scenarios to be able to become a more agile organization.
And I think that's always been the challenge, is finding the right stakeholder in the business to back a program like this. I would say that it's so theoretical when you're talking about it to people, because data quality isn't something. I mean, yes, of course you can measure it, but you don't realize how bad your data is and the impact it's having. I mean, we've mentioned returns, and we can talk about all of that, the kind of impact, but it's finding the right person within the organization to put their head above the parapet and say, yes, I'm going to spend the money on making sure we do that, because it's one of those underlying problems that it kind of just gets hidden, and it's finding the right people to drive that forward. And then you've got the stakeholder behind it, but then also thinking about, if we go right back to defining that and the governance and putting the right people in from the business, but also making sure that they've got that commitment to help drive it forward, because they've got, as we said, the change management. So I think it goes far deeper than people realize, and the impact of change is so important.
Should.
But when you do get it right and you make that investment, you can really see the benefits. But it is a tricky conversation to have, because people don't, as I said, don't want to admit that their data's bad, but also what does good look like for them? Because for some people, it's about making sure they're not getting returns. Others, it's about making sure that they are, delivering the right information to the internal system. So again, it's pulling together that, as you said, the ROI, and helping people really be able to think about that. And there's always been, and working in different vendors, there's always been the sort of, buy a tool, it will do everything for you. Well, we could all
It can
talk about
help.
the fact that
Yeah,
we've all seen people on their second or third attempt at doing this, and that's why it sometimes has a really bad reputation, because it's like, we've spent millions on trying to get our data quality, and we're still not there. So if they're on their second or third iteration, it becomes really hard to push that across the line. So then it's, how do you help people position that in a different way that's more exciting for the business? And sometimes you don't want to say data quality, and you may definitely not want to say master data management, because unfortunately that has the worst reputation, as in, everyone's spent years trying to get that right, and then they tie that into data quality as well. But I think we've moved on, we've seen the changes and how that can push forward, but there's still that lingering doubt in people's
Yeah.
minds that
You
they
know,
haven't been successful the first time.
and what was right 10 years ago
Yes.
might be not right now, and so you always also have this sentiment of, okay, I did it wrong. No, you didn't do things wrong, because you came to this point because you did the right things, and now you have to think, okay, how do I move forward? How can I move forward? So this continuously changing environment, that's something you have to cope with, and it's not about, I have done things wrong. No, you did things very right, because you are at this level now, but you want to move ahead, and you want to move further.
But what I'm hearing you say is, okay, data quality is important, but it leads to all kinds of benefits. It's a great thing to have, to work in a space that is well structured, well organized, where definitions are nicely done per channel. We know what we need for Amazon. We know how much of that data is already there. There's a nice dashboard that shows your data completeness scores. Um, that's the great place we all want to go. But then, yeah, I think the question is, why aren't we there yet, right? And what I'm hearing you guys say is, it is difficult, of course. It's difficult to define what those data quality levels are. It is difficult to get all the stakeholders aligned. It is difficult to maybe even change the business. Chris mentioned the agility of different businesses, and their ability to change from maybe a more IT focused structure to a more business owned structure, where, I mean, all fields and all disciplines are more IT driven, more IT focused than they were 10 years ago. Like, if we know that it is so important and brings so many benefits, like, what are the other drivers you see, or maybe the biggest drivers you see, for not getting to that nice special place where all the data, oh, no, we'll never get there, where most of the data is well structured and serves the channel needs?
I mean, I think I've said it already. It's not very exciting. And I think, there's so many other. I mean, to be honest, AI took the limelight. I think we were doing really well at getting people to understand that they needed to invest in data quality and so on. Then along comes a shiny new toy, and it pushes so many things to the side. And I think that's kind of coming back now, because the data that you need to build your LLMs and the data that you need to be able to be successful, a lot of it is coming from things like master data, or it should be. So I think we're now seeing governance and data quality coming back. And I think that's the driver now. So it had its maybe 3 or 4 years ago, people were really concerned about it, and then they were doing work on it. Then something else comes up, as it always does, and it got pushed to one side. But then people were realizing that in order to be successful in investing in these AI initiatives, they needed that great data. So I think for me now, it's having a resurgence. It's becoming more interesting, but maybe it's seen more of as an overarching data management solution rather than being on its own. And I think that's really helping people understand the importance. So for me, I think it's just been sidelined a bit, but it's coming back. And I think that that's what we're seeing now. But as I said, I think it's making sure that people don't expect just the solutions or the tools that they've invested in to do that for them. And again, there's such a difference in people thinking about, do I take one tool just to do my data quality, or do I use the data quality inside other applications? Because again, it's like you may be doing your data quality within your MDM for certain things, or you may have a separate data quality tool for your enterprise. And that is where it becomes quite complicated. So that's also been a stumbling block as to where is the best place to actually set that up. And there is no right or wrong answer around that, by the way. It's what works for you and what makes sense. But I mean, that's my take on it, that finally having great product data is coming back, and for those reasons. But there's been so many stumbling blocks along the way, and it isn't the cheapest thing to implement either. So in times of austerity, it's one of those things that may have been, quietly moved to one side because people don't want to make that investment. I don't know what
Yeah,
you're
and
saying, Chris. That's how I feel about it.
it's also the fear of the unknown. You
Mm.
step into something which you don't know actually, and that's also difficult for companies and for people, especially. And I think it's our job also to show them the way. Which steps do you need to take? I mean, it's not a big boom. You need to take little steps to
Mm.
start with. And what you said, Helen, there are several solutions in and around MDM. What way is the best way for your company? Because every company has different challenges. In a way, they have the same challenges, but on
Mm.
the other hand, they have a different history. They have a different way of working. So you need to adapt to this and see what's the best solution for them. And there is no one way to go. There are many ways to go.
And I think the other thing that people think is that they can do it all at once. And I think you mentioned it there. You've got to do it step by step. You've got to maybe think about setting up, I would always say, like maybe a pilot or a proof of concept or a small subsection of your product data. Maybe it's one particular range of products that you sell, or maybe it's your highest selling, or whatever you want to pick, or the most complex. And then you want to get started there and prove to the business and the organization how you've done that. So the other thing that people forget to do is to measure how, and because it's hard to say how bad your data is before you get started, because you need to be able to say, oh, that we've got how many duplicates, or we're missing this amount of data, or because of this is the amount of money we are losing, or these are the number of returns, or this is the number of abandoned baskets. So you've got to be really open and honest about that at the beginning. And that's hard. I mean, that's like a therapy session of saying, oh, I've got to actually admit that my data isn't as great as I'd like it to be.
Yeah.
Then you've got to be thinking about how can I do that gradually, and deliver the best impact. Because if you suddenly say, I've got to do everything all at once, it's quite scary, as you said, and quite difficult. So I think it's that whole structuring a really good program of how to drive the adoption of this across the business. Now, some of the things that I've seen that have worked, and it sounds really cheesy, is rewarding people for improving their data. So I have seen some companies where they've almost had a leaderboard or a dashboard about which teams have improved their data, or which particular parts, or maybe even different applications have got better, and then you get a reward, or you're the best data steward, or whatever it is. I mean, sometimes it's that, making it gamifying what you're doing to make it more exciting. And it's an interesting approach. I don't know if you've seen that out there, Chris, but I find
Actually,
that
actually,
fun.
actually, what you're saying is this is not just a management decision.
No.
It's something which has to be covered in the complete organization. So these all stakeholders needs to be aware of the importance of this issue. It's not just management saying, "Oh, we are going to implement the data quality tool, or we are going to do this or that." Everybody needs to be involved. It needs to be the way of working for a company, and this is a shift, a huge
Mm.
shift for a lot of people, because they're coming in the office, they're doing their job, and at 5 they're leaving the office and see you tomorrow. But it's something it's something which needs change in the organization, in the cultural way, and not just the technical way.
I think that's the bit that's underestimated, is it's actually a team sport. I mean, we could say that about MDM, we could say that about PIM, but I think, it's making sure that people understand that it may look little to them, but that one adjustment of one key attribute or one key part of the information. And again, that's the other thing that people forget, is that not one department owns that whole product data record. It belongs to multiple people,
Mm.
because you may have people in the supplier management part that are managing things like the country of origin, or maybe that sort of area. Then you've got the pricing part. If that's important to you, that belongs to commercial. And then there'll be other parts coming in from all across there, and thinking about the standardization of that. And again, things like descriptions and even the way you name your products is important as well. So I think, again, people think that, oh, it's owned by one area of the business. Absolutely not. It's a team that would be responsible for different parts of that. And that is why having that, overarching approach to it is so important. And again, it's getting that buy-in from the people that are the ones that are going to have to actually go in and do the data. Everybody at the top level, the management stakeholders, can go, yeah, this is fantastic. But if people who are actually responsible for that data don't get behind it, it's never going to work.
They're going to fall back on their Excel sheets.
Yes.
Ah,
It's
No,
their
but
happy place. So of course they
yeah,
are.
yeah, that's what they've been doing. That's the biggest competitor for any data quality, master data management, PIM initiative, is the spreadsheet, right? So, uh,
Or even the
I
access database, if we go back even further.
yeah.
no, but I think these are all very valid points, right? So it is all about the getting the people on the floor engaged as well, whether you do that through gamification or through training or dashboards, or maybe just listening to the problems that they face, and the problems that they have. But what we see, I think, with any customer that we're helping, it's, yes, you can map and analyze that process, and analyze the data and qualify it, and also paint a nice picture of where it should be going. Like, okay, let's change the onboarding process, or let's change the enrichment process. But you also have to listen to the people, and see what they're struggling with in day-to-day environment, where often a lot of, I would say, technical debt or decision-making debt has been accrued, where simple things you would say, like, okay, how do we naming conventions around a
Mm.
product? Like, if you do not align that across all the different divisions and departments, you first need to align that, right? And it's all those small but important decisions, if you haven't taken them previously, you get into a shitty situation. That's where we get involved, and then we actually have to basically untie that whole knot and see what are the decisions you actually left somewhere in a closet, and that we have to take out and bring to the fore again. And that's that therapy session maybe you mentioned as well, Helen, where you have to go and sit together in a room and discuss how we got here, but also how we're going to move forward.
And then we're going back to the old-fashioned data dictionary, actually.
Yes. Yes.
Defining your all the elements in a company. And yeah, as I mentioned, I'm already quite a long time in this business, so I've seen these
Mm.
old data dictionaries, and in fact, it's was very valuable, and it's still needed.
Mm.
And maybe the technical way you define things is different now, but uh, in fact, it's the same thinking, the same way of thinking of your basic information needs to have a certain definition. And if everybody agrees on this definition, it doesn't has to be a big, huge consensus, but Amazon needs data in a certain
Yeah.
way, and the ERP needs data in a certain way. And when you change your ERP, maybe this has to change. And but then when you have a definition, you know what to change into the new format, and that's often missing due to the fact that a company has grown organically, and not with a certain vision on this topic, and it worked. And there's always fixers in an organization who say, okay, and when I do this, then it's going to work again. And that's in every company the same,
I
and
mean,
it
it's
works
funny.
as long as these people are in the company, not fall ill, or
Mm.
even worse. Then it works, but it needs to be consolidated in in your way of working.
It's funny because it was just when you were saying about like thinking about the product name, for example, I remember the time, and we probably all do, when you used to set up about 8 different product name attributes, one for Walmart, one for Amazon, one for, Zalando, wherever it was. And that was how you did it. You maybe had a merchandising version, you had this. Now, of course, we've changed to having, channels and contexts and all of that kind of thing. But again, you've got to think about, it's not just I'd say the global name of that product. You've got to think about how you're going to define the naming that you're going to need for Amazon and the naming that you're going to need for that. So it's actually quite complex because the data quality isn't just at one level. It's got to be thinking about, is it meeting the requirements there? And then, of course, if you think about if you've got your ERP and it's SAP and there's limitations in the way that you name your products, and we all know that some of those SAP names nobody understands. So you've got to be able to think about how do you unpick that and move it forward. But then if you're mastering it, how do you then take it back and translate that? So it's not just a simple, oh, tick, we've got the quality right. It's then how do we make sure that it can go back to where it came from. So I think that whole definition, that data dictionary, is so important as we move forward. It's, as you say, it's almost going back to go forward again, because some of the good things that we had 10, 15 years ago were good for a reason, and they should be sort of pulled back out and dusted off and thought about. But it's again, it's that consensus of what good looks like, but you cannot think about every single attribute, because that's just, some things are just what as they should be. But the quality of things that is really important are, I would say, measurements and making sure that you understand that side of things. Because if you get that decimal place wrong, or you put it in inches and it's in centimeters, that has so much impact in, your shipping, your warehousing, everything. And I think those are for me where the quality is the most important. So it's really starting with the things that have the most impact in across the business. So it's which of those particular pieces of data around your products are the ones that matter most right now. And then as you move forward, they're going to have less impact. And that's, it is a program that takes a lot of time, and it's not standing still. And I think that's the other thing that people forget, is it's not a once and done thing. You've got to be constantly going back and looking at it and checking it. And again, I think that's where things, I'm going to mention AI again because it's really important, is that there's so many things that it can be done to tweak and check that the rules that you've built around it are correct and are delivering value and offering suggestions on how you can improve and so on. But that's maybe a conversation for another time. AI has so much to
Because
say on that.
I always say when you vacuum clean your house, it doesn't mean you don't have to do it next week again,
No,
because it it,
unfortunately.
it, it takes a repetitive time to do this action again and see if it's still okay. Yeah.
And of course, things change. And we didn't mention compliance. And for me, that is one of the key issues as well, as we're moving into changes in, regulations, and particularly with the packaging and recycling. And then, of course, the big thing, digital product passport, particularly here in Europe. And I know we're still a year out before the battery one lands, but who knows when the next lot come. But you've got to be thinking about that as well to make sure that you're ready. So I think the other really big driver for making sure that you have great data quality is compliance, is making sure that you're meeting regulations. And, and it's not very exciting, but that is where you're going to be fined and you're going to lose money and the impact and so on. And it's a lot of data to keep up to date, but make sure that you've got that quality up front so that you're ready for all of this. And I think sometimes it's forgotten about. So I just wanted to go back to
I've,
compliance because
I've seen
it's a passion
companies
for me. So yes.
I've seen companies from inside, and they had to deal with this compliancy, and they said, "Okay, this fine, it's okay. It cost me less than changing the systems." But once again, they got fined, and again, and then suddenly they're on the blacklist. And you see, there's all this kind of things. Uh, Compliancy is a huge thing. You mentioned batteries, but also textile
Yeah.
and is coming, and that's a huge market.
It's a huge topic. Maybe we should talk about that another time.
No,
But I think
for
it's
sure.
Yeah, I think
These are
it's
the next 6 episodes are DPP, are compliance, are AI. But I do want to touch AI as, I mean, um, we've been talking about sexy subjects like master data management and master data like measurements and all that core stuff that is boring but important. Compliance, boring but important. And I'm glad that we can keep the passion high. But I do just want to quickly touch on AI before we start wrapping up, because I think the resurgence we see in the interest in core product data, in master data, in data quality is because, well, I think Helen, you already mentioned it. It is the source for what all these large language models are built on. It is the source for how your product is being represented by ChatGPT, by Claude in their chat interface. At least what we see is that everyone wants to, like, again, join into that new shiny new tool and make sure that they're listed on ChatGPT on the subjects that matter to them, and they want to get that shiny thing in. But to get to that shiny space, you have to really fix the basics and fix the data quality. And therefore, I mean, what better way to start a podcast on product data than with data quality, of course. But we do see that resurgence. I think because of that realization that companies need to be AI ready if they want to keep competing at the same level in, well, even this year, but especially in 2 3 years from now. You need to have your data quality in place, you need to have your processes in place, and you need to have your tooling in place. So that's just why I wanted to touch AI, at least because I think the resurgence is because of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's all coming down to you need to have the basics in order. And AI can, by the way, help in this process. But you cannot put AI on top of things when the basics are not correct. So you need to build it up, and you can use AI to build your all your features and things like that, because it can help. But writing a good description is not possible when you don't have the basics correct. So that's different layers of helping AI helping in this process.
I mean, there's such a huge debate about what actually is AI ready data. I mean, what actually is it, and how does that come together? And I think this is one, area where you absolutely have to have that foundational layer of consistency to put things like generating romance copy, or whatever anybody wants to call it, or translation, for example. So if you don't have those guardrails around what good constitutes, you're going to create a monster out there if you're going to leverage AI to do lots for you. And I think you've got to just take that step back and think, I really need to make sure that my brand is represented in the right way. My products are how I want them to be, because they're out in the wild, and if it's wrong, that impact is so important. And if you don't put the right time and effort into defining what good looks like, you're wasting your time with spending all that money on AI. And I think it isn't as sexy and exciting, but it's so important, and it is absolutely why over the last few years things like data quality and master data have come back, and not that sort of thing that people just ignored and thought lived in a dark basement with
Exactly.
IT. And it's just, it's for
Yeah,
me, I'm so pleased, because you feel like you're on, like, on the
Indicated finally.
but you're also that sort of ugly orphan stepchild that nobody wants to talk to, because they want to talk about data fabric, or they want to talk about something else. But again, all of these initiatives don't work without great data. So I think it is, you're right, it's vindication. It's like, if you wait long enough, it will come back round again, a bit like fashion, really. So I think, not that I'm saying I'm going back to bell bottoms or anything, but I think it's just making sure that you are really behind it and understand the drivers. And again, I think by having something like an AI initiative, you're more likely to get money from your board or from the company to fund these fundamental things. And I think that's the other thing now. It's a change in narrative around why you need good quality data. So, particularly if you are selling across multiple channels, if you are planning to publish your data, your product data catalog, or however you want to think about it, into these new channels, you have to be thinking about that right now. And it is very much at its infancy, but I think this year, the rise of chat bots and the rise of doing that kind of way of shopping, agentic AI, of course, another huge subject. But I think it's thinking about how do you make sure that you are ready for this and that you are going to be successful, because everybody is going to be fighting for this new shelf.
But you're right. Abuse it in that sense, or use it as leverage for getting the real important fundamental product processes in place, or making sure those initiatives get off the ground, because it is so fundamental for the rest of the business as well. But sure, let's use AI as the reason why we're getting this project off the ground in
Why not?
2026.
Yeah.
You gotta go start somewhere. And I think even most organizations don't implement a new MDM process or improve the data quality in a week or a month, or maybe not even in a year. And you can already start, I think Chris already mentioned, you can start applying AI. You can apply the shiny thing in the data cleansing process. And there's lots of cool tools, companies, consultancies really helping you with getting from that data poor environment into a data rich environment, with all the guardrails in place. Because I think what we also hopefully have experienced by now is that if you just ask ChatGPT for an answer, it'll give you a confident answer back, even though it's completely wrong. So don't just feed in your whole catalog into ChatGPT expecting a fully enriched catalog back, or you get an enriched catalog back, but you don't know what it is. So in that sense, AI definitely has a role to play here, not just at the end of that process, but also during that whole process. So, I mean, yeah, you can actually play with the nice tools while you're cleaning up your room to buy new tools. I don't know, but in any case, it is an interesting world where there's lots of developments, and we see that resurgence of master data management, of the boring topics, because suddenly people are now starting to realize that it is important to have your master data in place.
And I think key in this is that governance needs to be in order, needs to be there, and because otherwise it's still people running around with some AI initiatives here and there, and it's not in a governance model. It's not consistent. It's not going to add value to the company at that moment.
Well, I mean, we have so much more ground to cover in future podcasts as well. So with that being said, we touched on a lot of topics on the data quality topic. So from defining what data quality actually looks like, getting the team on board, because it's, yes, you have to have the data in place, but you have to have your stakeholders aligned as well. It's a process, and it's not a single one-off process that you go through once, but it is a continuous process that comes back every week, every month, every however often you want to improve that data quality. And there are some tools that can help you along that journey, from the shiny AI tools to the more mundane but equally important PIM and the M tools. I think we covered it all. Is there anything we missed maybe in the past
I mean,
minute?
I think the one takeaway for me is that you've got to rethink about how you're going to reframe the business case for this, because it's much more about not talking about data quality, but more about the things that you're going to solve, like making sure that you have less returns, that you have the conversion, and so on. And I think the one thing that people forget is it doesn't fail within the organization because of what's happened. It's because nobody's taken ownership for it. So I think if you've had an unsuccessful data quality program, it's normally because you haven't engaged with the people that are actually doing it at the actual individual level. They don't see it as their job. So I think for me, the important thing, and we did talk about it earlier, is making sure that it's a team effort, because that's probably for me where most of the failure is not explaining the importance of it to the entire team. And that for me, if there's one takeaway, is it's a bigger than a one part of the business program. That's probably, I just wanted to close on that, really.
Great. Any closing thoughts from your end, Chris?
Well, I can agree on that, Helen, because the team is doing the actual work, and if they don't know why and how, then it's going to fail. So they also need to know uh, what's the reason I'm doing things, not just because I did the same thing yesterday. No, it's because I want to improve my company. I want to improve the results of my company. And one of the things is getting better data.
One final thing, because I've just realised I didn't mention it, but we all talk about data completeness and how, and it's. Do you think that people think, oh, it's complete, tick tick tick, I've got 100%, but is it the right completeness? It's not what's driving business outcomes. So it's more talking about the filling fields, which is lovely, but is it usable information? So I think it's really thinking about how you're measuring that quality. Thinking about, and I do harp on about the importance of certain attributes, making sure that you've called out the ones that are critical. Are they useful for supply chain? Are they useful for warehousing, and so on? And we did briefly touch upon the different channels. Are they ready for all of the channels that you need? And again, it's the business things like return drivers. Have you got the right weights, the right dimensions, and so on? And I think also, and sometimes also forgotten, is how effective is that particular content? Is it part of your search? Is it a part of conversion? So yes, of course, completeness is important. It tells you if something's filled in, but it doesn't tell you if it's true or if it's useful or if it's actually fit for purpose. So that probably is my one thing is, yeah, we all get very excited about how complete something is, but is that the most important thing? Is it actually what you're looking for? Is that quality data? That's probably my takeaway thing from the whole thing today.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. Don't aim for 100%, but aim for the right 80%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's also something I can live with, right? I mean, as a business owner, you're never going to get to 100%, and that feels frustrating. But it's actually okay if the 80% that you have is the right 80% and is the high impact 80%. Great. I think with that closing thought, we're wrapping up this first episode of the single source. We have another episode scheduled at the beginning of March, and we hope to see you then, because as already mentioned today, there's lots of topics and lots more ground to cover in the world of data, product data, PIM, MDM. We're going to cover it all in the coming weeks and months. So feel free to subscribe on any podcast platform that you're using. Keep an eye on our LinkedIn page or on our YouTube page, as that's where these episodes will be coming out. And I just want to thank you for listening in and joining us. And thank you to our panel today. Helen, Chris, thanks for joining me. And
Thank you
we'll
so
see you the
much.
next time.
Bye bye.
Bye, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.